Hey, everybody. Long time no see, except I never actually see you guys. I just kind of talk at the screen and see myself. But nevertheless, great to once again be able to do our weekly AMA. We had a little bit of a break. During that whole period, you saw several really cool things go down, like the Ergo meetup in Austin. One of those things was that. Aside from that, we had several other really interesting things happening in the Ergo ecosystem. So we have not been sitting idle doing nothing. So just we had a bit of a break, but now we're back. And just to switch things up a little bit, you see, I'm in a different room today. I don't think you can see, but there's a monkey over there, and today I have with me, I don't know if Leo, because Leo is upstairs. I have Lawrence. Say hi to Lawrence, everybody. This is Lawrence. He's a Jack Russell Terrier. He's one of my four boys. I got four dogs as well as two cats. So Lawrence is going to be my AMA buddy today. And speaking of my AMA buddies, we got Joe coming to you live from not as cold as usual Colorado.
That's right. It's finally stopped snowing. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to talking to the community.
It's only July. It's only June. I would think you'd still get at least 3 to 4 inches.
Yeah, sometimes we get snow at night, but that's just the way it is.
You could sound like you're proud of that fact. Like, yo, we get snow in June, man. We're cool. Is that like a thing of pride for you, Joe?
Wet water is life. I'm always happy when it snows or rains.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess, I'll buy that for $1, or I'll buy that for an Ergo. All right, guys. Well, unfortunately, I only can stay a half hour today. So that's why we shocked you and we actually started on time. This is like a big shock. I know, everybody. I'm going to give everybody just a moment to recover from the shock, okay? Okay. All right. Hope you guys are recovered. So let's go into the updates, and then let's get to your questions, as quick as possible today, so that Joe and I can knock out a few before I have to hop off. All right. So from my end, once again, as I was saying, we had our first, I think it's our first in-person Ergo meetup. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. Is that like first official in-person Ergo meetup?
There was one when the network first launched in 2019, but it was in Asia and it was quite small. So,
okay.
This is like the first one that had a developed community.
Okay. Well, I was very, very happy. We put that together rather quickly. I'd like to say thank you to my associates, Sam Lambert, who really helped out with putting this together. He's an Argonaut. He's also working with me. Is very much involved in Zengate. And so without him, I couldn't have done this. We couldn't have done this. So I'd like to thank Sam. And also, I really want to thank everybody that came out. I mean, it was fantastic. We had over 120 people show up, like 130 people. A lot of people from the Ergo and Cardano community, some new people. We definitely brought new people to the Ergo ecosystem from that meetup. So it did really, really well, I think. Basically, I mean, that's the whole point. It's not just, to come there and have some drinks and talk Ergo. You also want to attract new people. I mean, that's the whole thing, that's one of the main things that you want to do with a meetup. Or at least it's how I like to set up meetups. I'd like to have be as a medium for people to bring other people, to introduce them into the ecosystem, to show them what it's about, to kind of put a face to the name or the network, and just that people are understand, because it is all about community. Also, the online meetup was really, really good. I know that some people are not too happy about the audio and the video from the meetup, from the in person meetup. So the one that CW did was great, but the one that I was doing through my webcam, we'll do better next time. But there is other video of that was taken by several different people all throughout the meetup, and so what I'm going to do is give it to our video manager Andy, and because he just loves to add a bunch of video from a bunch of places instead of doing stuff with his family, and we'll put something together. I got all of Charles's speech. Also, I'd like to really thank Charles for coming. I mean, I'll tell you guys, Charles. I mean, he's always a trooper. He had a full day at Consensus, a full day. I mean, he did not stop for 1 minute, and well, it's because I was with him. I was, following him, and he was doing different interviews. He was doing fireside chats. I think he was on stage. I mean, it was like nonstop. He didn't have a second to stop and just take a breath. And right after that, he got in. He went to the meetup. He came to our meetup. He hung out. He basically talked Ergo. So I just really, I really appreciate that, and I hope everybody else does as well, because that's, you really don't know how difficult it is to keep that kind of schedule until you actually have to keep that kind of schedule for at least 1 day. I've been with Charles. I've been with these, here and there, like you wake up in the morning, you just don't stop. It just doesn't stop. I've been in those days with him. It's not fun. So again, thank you, Charles, if you're watching this, for coming to our meetup. And again, thanks everybody for joining. Really, really thrilled about that. So, and it's only the first one. We'll find other ways to have other meetups, and I really think that it was a big positive add to the community. It was just a lot of fun. Also, our friend Joe, help.
Fennel in Italian. Just call him Italian Fennel.
Yeah, Italian Foe made a special NFT for for the attendees of the meetup. And so in the coming week, I'll put together a list of people who registered, who came to the meetup, and also the people that joined us remotely, and everybody will be getting the special Ergnome NFT that our friend Fo made for us. Really cool NFT. I really like the art. I mean, but his art is always amazing. There's also a poster that I made of the NFT that we'll also raffle off and give away to one lucky Ergonaut, and some T-shirts, some custom Ergo T-shirts that I will also make sure that goes out to some Ergonauts out there. So it's still a lot of after merch coming at you guys. So a lot of really cool stuff still coming at you. So moving on. So the next item up for bid is the exchange listing. I know you guys are eager to do it. It is, again, it's actively happening. There is no, sometimes how these things happen, there's going to be like active development, and then it just stops, and then it'll do something else. There's active communication with the exchange right now. They're actively building the Ergo wallet right now. So it will happen. Another thing about that is that also, in this market, we might want to take advantage of this taking a little longer than we'd like. I think it's actually good. It'll give us time for the market to kind of recover a little bit, and for us not to, not to dive right into the bottom of the bear market, just to give us a little bit of action, and more exposure, that that we'd like from this listing. So again, we appreciate your patience. It is still in development. It is still happening. We're on top of it. We are. We have some tentative dates for different milestones in the integration from the exchange. I can't share them with you, obviously, but there are dates that we have worked out. So hopefully we can announce things and start moving things along fairly soon. Again, we'll keep you posted. And one last thing that I wanted to give you an update on is the ecosystem fund. Again, this is something that is actively being built by myself, as well as several ecosystem builders, the ecosystem fund builders that I am that I'm acquainted with. And so I should have an update for you guys in about, say, 2 to 3 weeks. I should have some progress. And so there is also 2 verticals that we're working on right now. We're also working on a vertical of creating a custom challenge in Catalyst, in the Cardano Catalyst, for cross-chain applications. So we could potentially take advantage of Catalyst as well. It's called Catalyst Natives. So again, there's a lot of development going on there. There's going to be a lot more avenues for people in the ecosystem who are looking to develop new things, to get exposure, to get funding, to get support. So that is, and that's one of the things that we're always working towards, is to get as much support for you guys as possible, for you guys to be able to build what you want to build. So that is it for me. Lawrence doesn't really have anything to say right now. He's just hanging out. Okay, so I'll give the microphone over, the proverbial microphone over to Joe. So what do you got going on from your end, Joe?
Well, in terms of the ecosystem, we did see the implementation of EIP 27. That rollout was smooth and quiet, which is the way that we had initially hoped. Network rolled over that block height, and funds started getting redistributed to the reemission contract. I think so far it's collected over 7,000 ERG. Now, the positive is that gives us a lot of runway in terms of time until our emission period rolls over, and we have to hand things off to various economic drivers for security. Short-term pain is that profitability resets, and so mining profitability is kind of taking a hit. That usually will adapt over time. Proof of work is pretty self-healing in that economic game theory behind it. We've seen that multiple times in multiple proof of work coins. So we kind of go into a period of short-term readjustment, which can be painful. Hopefully miners out there either stay profitable, or they can always pop to another chain and come back to us once situation improves. We also are going to be launching 5.0 testnet, which refactors the costing mechanism for how contracts are executed and how they're included in block space. That's going to be a big performance upgrade that should be implemented, after it's properly tested. Hopefully we get a lot of developers on there to break it, play with it, improve. I think that for the next couple of months, we'll see some performance and scalability improvements. We have a lot of infrastructure that has been in development from the community that would really benefit from this upgrade. So hopefully, we start to see all of that rolling out at once, and Ergo may look quite a bit different as soon as that rolls out. Quite exciting.
Yeah, actually, just to add to what you're to what you're talking about, I guess it's still in context. Maybe some of you saw that I was what I was saying maybe a week ago, maybe a little bit more, is to have Zengate be more actively involved in putting together affordable mining equipment for Ergo, for people who are looking to get into mining Ergo, and create, basically miner creator assistance, so that we can, expand the network, we can secure the network. So that's also in the works right now. So we're figuring out the lowest hanging fruit, basically, what is going to be the most effective way to do so. And this is, like I said, that this is going to be mostly, I mean, I'm not looking to make, any kind of killing on this or anything. I literally want to have this where we have a business model that obviously covers costs, but really is set up so that we can truly improve the network. We can provide these services, provide miners, provide all these things for people who want to do it, might not have the means to do it, might not have the knowledge to do it. So because there's also been quite a few people that reached out from the community asking if there's something like that, because as you know, Bitcoin has all these different companies that will create just plug and play mining equipment, create rigs, rent out rigs. And I mean, I know we have a little bit of that, but I would like to have that be readily available to people, just so that more people can be involved in actually actively participating and securing the network. So again, I will also be speaking to you guys about this, getting more input from you, because this is for you. And hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll figure something out. We're going to have more mining rigs out there, more people mining Ergo, giving people a lower barrier of entry into mining Ergo, and getting more people involved. So that is it from me. Unless you have something else, Joe, we should probably move on to the questions. What do you think?
Let's hop into what the community has to ask.
All righty. Okay. And all right. So, well, first, I would like to get this out of the way. So, Denny, okay. So, as this guy is saying that Dan is like bad guy from Inspector Gadget petting his cat. Well, first of all, this is a dog. Okay. This is a dog. It's not a cat. Okay. And I'm not Claw, because first of all, you don't see his face ever. And Claw's got a claw. I have no claws. So this is complete FUD. So just FYI. All righty, let's get to some more Ergo specific questions. Okay, so here's a nice question about Zengate that Golden Ergs is asking. Do you have a team of devs for Zengate? Yes, we do have a dev team that I'm spinning up right now, that we're spinning up, but we definitely have room for more, and we're basically planning it out right now to see where we can, where we can fill resource dead, because I feel very strongly about involving as many people from the community as possible. So we're actively working on creating those opportunities. It's just taking a little bit of time to flesh things out, because the project is so big, or so involving. So let's see. And here's a question, actually. So, any news about the bridges we have built? So I guess, Joe, the question would be, so what are the updates for the bridges that we're building right now, Rosen Bridge and whatnot? Right. So what say you?
Well, let's start with a little bit of backstory, since it's an AMA. I think yesterday, unfortunately, the one bridge was exploited for about 100 mil. That puts the net value that's been hacked on bridges at about $500 million this year, which is pretty wild to kind of think about. So Ergo actually has been in the bridge infrastructure and research thing for almost the better part of a year. And we've been watching and learning from the different exploits that have happened in the space. We at one point were about ready to roll out Sissy, which is a wormhole variant, and then that was exploited on a different chain. So we kind of went back to first principles and said, okay, well, how can we really distribute trust and make this infrastructure more difficult to attack? And we came out with the Rosen Bridge. The Rosen Bridge right now is built in pieces. It actually is on testnet. I know that MHS and team of developers that he works with are currently testing it, trying to break it, and that's basically the general testnet experience. Good news is things seem to be progressing pretty well, and I do believe this Wednesday he said that we would see some more concrete results. I do think that Rosen really offers some better assumptions just because there's two different parties or layers that need to interact with each other, but neither has the ability to act independently. And the game theory behind it is if we see a malicious actor on one of the two levels, you have the ability to stake slash them, which is kind of like an economic punishment. So I think we'll see that roll out. I think last I heard, he was expecting about 2 to 3 weeks, but it's a work in progress. And whenever you have a work in progress, the most important thing is always bug hunting and making sure that everything is working as intended. So that's, if we're going to try to build a bridge framework that's based on, like best security practices, we need best security practices in development and implementation. I do believe the first bridge is going to be on Cardano. I know he's already building on the Cardano testnet side, the Ergo testnet side. And I'm looking forward to, seeing that initial testnet transactions, playing around with seeing how things are moving across. I do know that Ergo Dex naturally has a foot in the Ergo ecosystem and a foot in the Cardano ecosystem. And they also have a pretty nice UI that's pretty performant in terms of switching back and forth, which on their website is just a button. So I do actually think they are going to support a user interface on their DEX that should give the user experience of Rosen, pretty seamless approach to where, you're transferring, at least from the user perspective, from one instance of the DEX to another instance of the DEX on the same website. And hopefully that drives some adoption. I know there's also been research into other blockchains. Now, the general framework or pattern action is going to be the same, but there are always some assumptions that need to be implemented that are chain specific. That has to do with block time and Nakamoto consensus. And, in a way, the guardians and watchers need to come up with some consensus in terms of what settlement time is going to look like. Obviously, when you're talking about that block height, as it gets higher, it gets a little bit more secure. And because you have actors making calls to verify transactions, actually having a little bit more block height to where different validators or guardians are looking at different blocks, you get some diversity, which actually increases the assumptions. So I'm looking forward to seeing that roll out. So work in progress. I wish I could say this date, but I think the most important thing is that it's done right.
Absolutely. Because we see what happens when things are done fast. It's just, you don't want to mess around with these things, because I'm sure that everybody will be more happy with this thing taking a month longer than with this thing taking $100 million hack.
Yeah, that's painful. I mean, um, sad.
Right. So we have a couple of other people asking. So this is a question from the Chilean machine. Chilean. Anyway, and so there was another question from another community member asking, when Ergohack results, sir?
That's a good question. So we actually are still waiting for a couple of judges to submit, unfortunately. A couple of people that committed to being judges were a little bit more buried on their work schedule. Plus, usually the Ergohack event was like a short couple of day event versus this one was like Ergohack Fest. And so the benefit of that is we actually had a lot more projects participating. And instead of having like a 2 or 3 day marathon, we had like a 3 week development period, which, actually provided a lot more community results. But there's two negatives to that. Number one is it put a lot more burden or overhead on the judges relative to past Ergo hacks. And the second thing is we saw a lot of really nice projects to where, I last Ergo hack, I was like, oh, really wouldn't want to be a judge, but this one, I'm just happy that I'm not. That's a hard decision to make. There was a lot of open code, a lot of documentation, a lot of good ideas out there. So I really have to commend all the participants. I know I had told the team that we needed to at least pay out like the participation rewards while we were waiting. I don't know if that's happened yet, but I will get on that today to make sure that it has. I'm just looking forward to see what they say. I'll ping them, but when people are snowed in, all you can do is shovel, and unfortunately, sometimes the work keeps coming. But I definitely think we need to get in front of that.
And being snowed in June is no picnic. Joe knows all about that. Snow in June. Well, all right. So we got another question here. A good one. How does Autolycos differ from other memory hardened algorithms?
Sure. So, when you look at your GPU when you're mining Autolycos, the bottleneck is basically the memory bandwidth. That's going to be the first thing that kind of, let's say, bottleneck slows things down, restricts performance. A lot of the times in other memory hardened algorithms, it's both the memory bandwidth and the core clock itself. That's actually a part of why Ergo miners often say, hey, my GPU is not quite pulling as many watts as many other algorithms. And the result of that is you have less heat, a little bit less carrying cost versus, some algorithms, work with finding floating points, which is, pretty nice. Then you have some that, I don't know, let's just say are really intense, which, there is a certain philosophy behind like prog pow or kapow or various various algorithms. For Autolycos, the main goal was let's write it in Scala and let's basically maximize the bandwidth, and once that bottlenecks, you don't have quite the same stress on your equipment. Hopefully that provides cheaper cooling costs, especially it's summer and, some of these newer GPUs like 3090s, you can basically cook bacon on. And looking at the 4th generation that's coming out from NVIDIA, those things are power hungry. I mean, they look like some pretty intense machines. We'll see how they do with mining. I have no idea. But that infrastructure improvement where, you have a little bit less stress on your GPU, you have a little bit less to pay in terms of your power to the wall, you have a little bit less to pay in terms of your thermal management of whatever area you're mining in. It passes on a little bit of savings to the end user, which I think is ultimately a good thing.
Well, thanks for that, Joe. So, guys, unfortunately, I do have to drop off. And again, it's a pleasure being able to do this again. And we will be making it a regular thing once again. And, next week, I'm going to have a lot more information for you guys on various different things that we spoke about today, like the ecosystem funds and other vectors that we're engaging in right now. So please always feel free to reach out to me on any social media, Telegram, Twitter. I even think I still have a MySpace page somewhere. I probably do. I probably still have an America Online account somewhere. But anyway. All right, guys. Well, Joe's going to stay here and answer some more questions. And I will be speaking to you guys soon. And so this is Dan signing off. It's your show now, Joe.
All right. Let me see if I got the link thing. Whoops. All right, guys, give me a minute. I got to set up a thing. Andy, why don't we go to the next question? All right. This says, still no bank account for the EF. Is it more complicated for a crypto entity to acquire one? Well, we actually do have let's call it half of a bank account, right? So unfortunately, we were applying for a bank account, and what happened is geopolitical problems, right? And one downside to the Ergo team, which I think is an upside, but we have core members that are in China, in the United States, in Russia, and unfortunately, these countries don't always get along, right? Right now we have war that started, sanctions, and that kind of has added a lot of complexity to doing business as the foundation. So right now we are using third-party payment provider that's basically like a merchant payment provider to fund things that we need to fund. That's happening. Now, in terms of like a traditional bank account, it actually looks like we need to refocus. And right now we're actively talking to potential partners in both Dubai and Bahrain, which tend to be a little bit more neutral because, well, they sell energy to all sides. That is like an external factor that's just hard to deal with. There's nothing as a team we can do. We had basically gone through all the approval process, and then once sanctions kicked out, we've had a couple people that are parties that go through their security audit review, and they say, you have Russians on your team, you have people from China on your team, and that kind of creates potential liabilities for them, and they get nervous. Now, crypto in and of itself, is a difficult it's a difficult business to be in terms of like legislative clarity, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the space. To some degree, it's almost like running like a marijuana business or something in states where it's legal, but it's federally illegal. So then, those particular entities can't use banks in the US. And so it's kind of like some grayish area. Crypto is somewhat analogous to that. Plus, having a globally distributed team, adds a little bit of extra fun to the mix. So why don't we go to the next question, Andy? So Riley is asking about NepoPals, where how does this use super blocks to facilitate that? What happens if a transaction occurs between two super blocks? So when you're using NepoPals, you actually are using a specialized type of light client that's compressing the chain. That means that we will still have full nodes carrying the full history in the network. So it will be verified. Now, one thing that's going to be interesting in terms of like longer term development of specifically full node clients is, I would like to see like a NepoPal sync that's, uses the superblock snapshot to rapidly catch up to chain history and then kind of downloads the full chain in the background. So there will always be some verification. If you're running a instance that's empowered by NepoPals, it may be that some users will set it up to pull from their own full node. Others, we may even see it as like a service. It will be interesting to see how logarithmic space mining develops longer term. But essentially, you still have the complete, Merkle root of the tree, and so you can verify everything. Let's go to the next question. So Augustus Kent, it sounds like a familiar name that's from somewhere, but I have no idea where. Considering the bear market and reduced dollar value of Erg, does the US have, or the EF have funds to keep operating as you have been doing? Yeah, we do. One nice thing about the EF is we are pretty light. Our main focus has always been to take a pretty small chunk of the emissions, which 4% is not a lot when you consider the carrying cost starting from zero. Like everything in the network, all of the partnerships, especially in that initial like seed phase, were much more expensive. So the EF is not fancy. The Ergo Foundation, sometimes we get a hard time from people saying like, when are you going to, push more media and, hire more influencers and all of that. That's really not fully in our purview. We don't have the funding for that. And we've always tried to be conservative and say, okay, well, we have a development roadmap that's open, collaborative, and our main focus has been to deliver that to the ecosystem. We do also engage in regular content, but we try to be very budget conscientious because, the reality is you can't really market an organic community long term. You can certainly try to get exposure and pay, somebody that makes funny faces in YouTube videos and says pump it, but long term, I would say that tends to only have a very short life. And our goal with Ergo is to be survivable long term. So, if that ever were to be an issue, which at this point I don't see that being an issue, I would volunteer. I started as a volunteer anyway, so I would probably go back to that. I know there's a lot of developers out there that contribute. That's part of the beauty of an open source community, is that you get people from all around the world that play around with code development and governance, and think about how to build things in the best way. We have a ton of community developers out there that build small open source tools that are just valuable, and as that kind of aggregates and gives value to whoever comes next. Right now in our industry, it's like there's this desire to say, okay, decentralized decentralized is like a really bad advertising term, in my opinion, to where people want someone else to be in control, to create all of the value for them. And it's basically like a slogan for a centralized company. Ergo is an open source ecosystem at its core. That's what it's always been. And so that does have, both pros and cons. Now, the biggest pro to that is you don't see a lot of gatekeeping. I don't come up here and spin one narrative that everybody is supposed to follow in an open source ecosystem. You get a lot of diversity, you get a lot of organic growth, and power is a lot more distributed to the people that come into the network and build. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So the next question says, Kushti said he was committed to work on the Ergo project for the next few years. Joe, do you have the same long-term commitment of working for Ergo? Sure. The goal of the Ergo Foundation was never to be the king and CEO of Ergo, right? I know that there's that desire to like find a leader and get behind him and, rah, 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 that's going to create the most value. I do think that the Ergo Foundation in some form maybe around long term, but ideally, if I look at, let's say, 4 years from now, it would actually be nice to have multiple entities that are committed and actively looking at maintaining and evolving the core development of Ergo. I think the EF ultimately should decentralize itself. But see, that's the goal here is to be an open source ecosystem that is globally distributed and unstoppable. And when you have like one guy that's, deploying funds type thing, it really is a bad look for decentralization. I know that's a popular marketing term, but I do think that a lot of times in our space, it's a gimmick. And a relatively cheap one at that. So I think that having that as our kind of core mission is long term. We develop the ecosystem to where it becomes more sustainable without us. We develop the market access side to where it's no longer needed. And we ultimately kind of get out of our own way, and at that point, the ecosystem, will grow beyond us, and that's ultimately the point of this. It's actually one of the most interesting things about Bitcoin is that, the leader of it jumped ship, disappeared, right? And so I do think that is that's a good track to follow. Is over time get less and less important and have less and less power, versus try to be the king and the captain of the ship. Let's go to the next question. Thanks. I have no idea where Augustus Kent is from, but that's has some, I don't know, reference. Probably it's cultural stuff. I'm not always up to date on what's the latest movie and all that. CW, nice to have you here. Says EIP 27 was recently implemented. Have we seen any issues since the block height ticked over 777? 217. On the network side, that went really smooth. But that was something that was stress tested and retested. And I know Alex spent a lot of time making sure that was going to go over right, and then working with our partners in terms of how to support this new update. Now, probably the only issue is profitability reset, which is painful for miners. That tends to happen when you have a rapid change in a coin's emission. From the I guess investor side, they're like, oh, there's less coming to market, so it's going to be great. But it's actually a little bit painful for a period of time for miners in proof of work, because suddenly, the payouts get less. And so what happens is it forces this environment where people that have the lowest cost overhead are still profitable, but a lot of people that do not, have the cheapest rates and the most efficient rigs, they start to become unprofitable. And so generally what happens is, you go through a period of kind of readjustment, and then over time, many times the miners that are the most profitable will not sell into markets in that environment. And then you kind of get like the halving movement. So I do think that on both sides, there's a balancing mechanism there. That's why, I would say that over time, proof of work has shown to be pretty self-healing. And it's also why, I spent the majority of the time, as we were getting into EIP 27, talking about, the need for miner incentive, because proof of work is incentive based. And it's also part of why I think longer term, we need to ensure that we essentially deliver value to the miners, because they did take hit, they did take short-term profits off the table and literally put them in a box for later. So, miners that supported that, I appreciate that. And hopefully as a network, we come together. Our developers are building a lot of things that I think will deliver value and adoption and ultimately profitability for those of you that are supporting Ergo. Now, I know there's a lot of miners that luckily still have the ability to mine other chains that at this moment are more profitable. So they have some ability to adapt their businesses until Ergo, let's say, the profitability resets, and it makes sense for them to come back. And, I hope we see them back. Let's go to the next question. So this question, is it easier now to deal with parties like exchanges in this market? Yes. A lot of exchanges will list ERC20 tokens or other supported native assets. Sometimes you'll see combination. Usually ETH is dominant. Solana was also did a pretty good job of getting exchange options, because that's fast, right? And so from the profitability of a exchange as a business, they can collect listing fees and all of that much faster with a lot less engineering involved. We're a mainnet, which is a different animal, right? I've actually had exchange agents that work at exchanges, but I really don't think have the greatest understanding of the industry. Actually proposed that why don't you just list Ergo as an ERC20 and we can list you very fast, right? Well, it number one, it creates a big issue for users. Those type of wrapped assets on exchanges always create pain in terms of like users sending from mainnet to the wrapped listing or vice versa. And then you get a lot of users that kind of nuke their own wallet on accident, send their tokens into space. It's painful. But the benefit of us listing as a mainnet, even though it's always slower and a little bit less attractive for exchanges because it takes a lot more work, is we start to open the door for projects on top of Ergo to get listed. And so that's already, discussions I've been having that are ongoing in terms of predictable pricing, right? I over time, I'd like to see some exchange partnerships to where, I have the ability to kind of open doors for everybody else. That's always been one of my goals in my position, is not just to work for Ergo in the short term, but to open the door for all of the developers that are building on Ergo, so they just have less unknowns, bureaucracy, and I can kind of help out the entire ecosystem. So that's a work in progress. I know everybody's a little bit disappointed with the rate of integration at that exchange. I can't say that I'm particularly happy about it. Those of you that have been around for a while kind of remember that actually this happened about a year ago with KuCoin, where the initial deliverable and then the actual deliverables were not quite in sync. And I got a lot of shit for it then. I imagine I'll get the same now. But in the end, we did deliver that listing, and we will deliver this one. Let's go to the next question. Let's see. Gab is asking, does the proof of work algorithm have the ability to adapt to changing GPU hardware of the future? Oof. Well, I'm going to answer that two ways, okay? Number one is I can't necessarily predict everything about the GPU hardware of the future, right? So if I were to come in and I were to say, Gab, we're always going to be fine and we're always going to adapt, I'd be lying to you. I don't know the future. It's a really interesting question. I do know that AMD recently acquired Xilinx, which is a chipset manufacturer from Taiwan that tends to, deliver pretty high-end products. That cleared, I think, February, March, and was upwards of like $50 billion. And so we could ask the question, okay, a decade from now, what is a GPU going to look like? It may be similar to what we see today, just a lot more efficient over time. There could always be some major, changes, upgrades that, at this point may not even be public. So hard to say what R&D departments are doing. It can proof of work adapt? Yeah. We do have, number one, an ability to expand the memory table. I was talking earlier in this AMA about, how that's kind of the bottleneck of Autolicos. So that is pre-programmed to go through set increases to whereas GPU, they basically get more powerful, more efficient over time. We will also be expanding, and that it's a part of what helps prevent ASICs on the network. Now, in terms of like full adaptability, let's say we wake up and it's just a whole new world, right? We also have the ability to fork somehow and adapt if we absolutely had to. That would not be desirable, but it's hard to predict the future. Right now, for a while anyway, chips were pretty hard to come by, just due to supply chain issues, and we'll see. I know the 4 series is coming out, and it's like, okay, well, I'm not even sure what their performance is going to be yet, and they're already probably in the process of production versus what's the 5 series, 6 series, 7 series, etc. I'd be lying if I said that I knew that. So we'll see. That's all I can say. Let's go to the next question. What network improvements are you the most excited about for the next 6 months? Personally, I would say beyond the core. Okay, so we'll look at 2 things: core and the ecosystem. In terms of the ecosystem, probably the thing that excites me the most is subpooling, right? The reason why is it's a completely new environment for proof of work. It's an entirely new economic model. I think it's going to deliver a lot of value to miners, and Ergo was ultimately a miner-driven network. Miners paid for the initial foundation budget, and so I think that could deliver a ton of value. And it also really creates some unique environments where potentially you have fair launches versus, pre-mine, and the early adopter and all of that stuff. I'm excited. I think the most interesting thing I would like to see on that side would be a project launch from Genesis via subpooling. We haven't seen that yet. We have definitely seen projects in the ecosystem, take their time, their energy to support subpooling, and that's amazing to see. I have to kind of thank everybody that's contributed to that. But having a project actually launch from Genesis via a subpool, in my opinion, is going to be like a new era, let's say, for proof of work. In terms of the core, 5.0 is going to be pretty interesting. I'm really excited to see, the performance improvements that are going to come along with it. I think that will be pretty beneficial for us long term. Why don't we go to the next question? Let's see. Waves is often listed as a close partner to Ergo that was built on Scorex. Can you comment on how Ergo is more resilient and less prone to too big to fail smart contracts? Different development principles is the simplest answer. One thing that is pretty nice about Alex is he, in terms of like the range of developers in crypto, sometimes you have people that are like on the extreme of like big and crazy ideas, which are interesting. I can't say that's not worth pursuing. And then Alex is really very much over here on like what is the conservative, well seasoned principles and what trade-offs are not worth it. So I do think that in terms of like looking at other projects, Ergo is relatively conservative. It's principles first. I guess the best analogy I can use is it's like if you're walking in the forest in the fog, you don't really know where the trees are, right? And so sometimes when you have big and crazy ideas, the potential benefits, right, are huge, but the drawbacks are potentially quite damaging as well. And generally, the like principle that we try to follow is watch and learn. And once something has proven to be resilient, it's definitely worth looking into how to implement it. But the only thing that really demonstrates resilience is time. You cannot cheat that. I know that that's not good for marketing, but ultimately time is what shows strong designs, resilience. So we try to practice that principle and watch and learn a lot. I know Alex is always reading the latest research. That's something that he does pretty much continuously. But then it's a matter of saying, okay, well, this is a great idea. Let's sit and watch. How does it work? And what, what is the complexity that at this point isn't being considered? Because oftentimes a really good, simple idea in the mind is a little bit more complex in reality. Let's go to the next question. All right, let's wrap it up. I'm ready to go. Yeah, I need to announce that we are actually going to be moving the AMA to Thursdays, starting the 7th of July. One thing that we do have coming up soon in the ecosystem that I'd like to give a little bit of coverage to is we're going to have another Ergoversary here very soon. I know there's been a lot of work in terms of putting together content for that event, both from the community, from the Ergo Foundation, and from some of our ecosystem partners are also contributing as well. So I hope that those of you out there have time at some point to tune in. Doesn't necessarily have to be the day of. Everybody, has a life, and sometimes we produce a lot of content that people can't have the time to track. But yeah, I hope that everyone tunes in and celebrates with us, raise a glass to being able to bootstrap from nothing and build a pretty nice network and a pretty awesome ecosystem. So I appreciate everybody coming or watching this later. Have a good day, everybody.